hauls coal every day on this railroad. We're going to take a tour of those 3 branches and show you how they get the coal out of these hills. So let's get going on this episode of Train Time with Lucas Berry on the New River Network. The R.J. Corman West Virginia line leaves the main line at Thurman and runs about 15 miles to a loadout in Pax. This is probably the busiest of any of the branches in Fayette County, with an empty train going up and a loaded train going down practically daily. Sometimes not, but most times that's how it works, at least that I've seen lately. To illustrate this, we'll chase a loaded train at various spots along the line. First up is a place I really like, the Pax Branch Baptist Church. It's August 2023 and the R.J. Corman crew is bringing the first half of their train up out of Pax for Mount Hope. Why only half? Well, because the grade is so steep here, as steep as 2.2%. Only half the train, 55 cars, is brought up at one time. It may not seem like a lot, but coal is heavy and those cars carry about 240,000 pounds of coal each. Once the cars are parked in Mount Hope and the brakes are set, the crew heads back for the second cut. We won't see that in this shot. We will see the second cut at this location, Lake Hollow Road. I really like this spot, even if it's not all that great for what I'm here for. It's September 2024 and we have a very special visitor to this line today. CSX number 1973, the Chessie System Heritage Unit. What's a heritage unit? Well, it's a locomotive painted to honor a predecessor railroad. CSX did their units with the front looking like any other on the roster before fading into the paint scheme of the honored railroad, in this case the beloved Chessie. Listen as Chessie and her companions work hard to drag this coal up the grade. We'll jump ahead now to a place called Harvey. This is where RJ Corman's office is for this line, and they sometimes keep their engines here. We're again waiting on Chessie, and while I have a second, let's talk about those RJ Corman engines. You saw them at the very last shot. They were the two big red things pushing on the rear. RJ Corman gets CSX engines and CSX coal cars, but again, these trains are heavy, so they need some help. RJ Corman just in 2023 got two new SD70Ms. They used to be on Norfolk Southern's roster before NS got rid of them, and now they found their way into the coal fields of West Virginia once again. We're in Thurman now, and once the RJ Corman crew gets the train into town, they'll park it and call the CSX dispatcher for permission to enter the main line. Once they get that permission, they'll pull the train into Rush Run siding just outside of town, or sometimes they back the train onto the number 1 main track and tie it down. It really all depends on the circumstances. while we're waiting, let's talk a little bit about the Chessie System. The Chessie System was never an operating railroad. It was a holding company that owned the Chesapeake in Ohio, the Baltimore in Ohio, and the Western Maryland. In 1963, the C&O gained control of the B&O, and while it was not a true merger as the B&O was very financially sick at that time, that move led to the creation of the Chessie System 10 years later, hence the number for the Heritage Unit in 1973. In 1980, the Chessie System merged with Seaboard Coastline Industries to create CSX. In fact, CSX, the name, stands for Chessie Seaboard, and the X is basically a multiplication symbol. Since the Chessie System was not an operating railroad, each of the railroads it owned retained their respective identities throughout the years of Chessie ownership. While they shared a common paint scheme, each road's reporting mark, usually an abbreviation of the company's name, appeared on the side of the cab to indicate which railroad technically owned that engine. In 1983, the Chessie System railroads finally began to fall, with Western Maryland being the first to go, being merged into B&O. And then 4 years later, 1987, the B&O fell into the C&O, and the C&O was finally absorbed by CSX in August of '87. Okay, while I've been yapping, the dispatcher has indeed given permission, and we're set to roll now. About 9 miles east of Thurman is Prince, and that's where we see the second branch of our tour, the Piney Creek Subdivision. Owned and operated by CSX, this thing leads the main about a mile east of here in Quinnamont Yard for the 13-mile run to Raleigh Yard near Beaver. Unfortunately, you just can't get into Quinnamont unless you work for CSX, and I don't. So, we'll have to film at Prince. Not a problem though, I like filming here. These trains load near Glen Daniel, about 13 miles from Raleigh Yard. Again, we see Chessie. This time in July 2024, she leaves with empties up the branch. This train had brought 160 cars out of Newport News, Virginia, but they can only take half of that at one time, so the conductor will split the train in half before they continue on. This is actually the only good footage I have of a train on Piney. I plan to change that though, I just don't know when. It's not exactly easy to find out when a train's coming up there. We move now to Meadow Creek, and a branch that doesn't technically begin in Fayette County, but does cross into it along the way. This is the Sewell Valley Subdivision, or as most rail fans just call it, the NF&G. This was once the Nicholas Fayette and Greenbrier Railroad. You would not have seen an NF&G locomotive or any cars though. This was a paper railroad. It was only existent on paper. It was owned by the C&O and the New York Central as a means of settling a dispute between the two over who had the rights to extract that valuable West Virginia coal. Our last shot of the day is once again back in Fayette County as those same empties we saw at Meadow Creek roll through Meadow Bridge. This train will continue through Raynell, Rupert, and load at Anjing before going back down from the main at Meadow Creek. so much for watching. For the New River Network, I'm Lucas Berry reminding you that anytime is train time.